Ai, alguém roubou. Ai, ai, ai. Vai, limpa o chão.
Nossa, é demais, cara.
Beleza, galera. Eu tenho 3. E falta um break aqui nesse meu full, velho.
Boa. Ah, mas você já não tem um no P4M3?
Tenho vários, meu filho. Tá aqui a ostentação, pai. Eu quero mais e mais. Quero ficar rica.
É só pra mim que o vídeo tá piscando.
O quê?
Tá sumido quando eu jogo com a gente piscando.
Ai, a bebida aqui. Nossa, tá muito importante. Pô, galera, vamos se armar então. Parar de correr e pegar
Nada a ver, velho. Nada a ver. Você tá falando muita
disso.
asneira.
Tá falando
Eu disse.
asneira. Eu vou pegar todas as minhas melhores armas, velho. Tô nem vendo.
Eca.
Ah, eu esqueci de novo de fazer o machado. Eu desisto. Não é pra
Beleza.
ser.
Peguei. Ah, você queria um machado?
Queria.
Deixa eu deixar o segundo
Sempre
full aqui.
esqueço de fazer, cara.
Deixa eu ver se eu tenho tudo on break 3. Ah, eu tenho tudo. Ó, break 4, esse capacete aqui, viado. Ah,
Mano,
moleque.
Alguém
Beleza.
tem lápis lazuli aí? Queria
Tem,
cantar
meu
meu
baú
machado.
Cadê tu?
Aqui.
Chuvisco. Tem alguém no Clanline?
Não, então,
Tem
mas
alguém
se você encantar um machado na
Vamos pro
enchedment
PVP.
table,
Vamos pro PVP, bora.
não vai vir
É.
coisa de PVP.
O login dropou e não veio nada pra mim. Gosto assim.
Ô, galera, CF não consegue nem
Você tem
pegar
que
nos
colocar
bagulho.
livro, Cef. Encantando na enchedment table, acho que não tem como vir sharpness no machado.
Ah, eu quero só unbreaking, pelo menos.
Eu tenho Sharpness 3, se você quiser depois.
Meu Deus, você vai demorar muito pra me dar o lápis
Ué, eu já
lazuli?
te dei, velho.
Deu,
Ah,
sim.
pega lá no meu
Pior
baú.
que não tá comigo, não.
Dei não. Mentira. Ah, safado. Miserável.
Isso eu vou reparar os bagulhos.
Cadê, mano?
Oi? Gente, tô aqui esperando já para a batalha. Mas é o seguinte, enquanto a bicha do CF se prepara, a gente fica aqui admirando a minha linda skin. Olha isso, velho. Sou eu em tamanho real. Olha isso, galera.
Linda, mano. Morfina.
Unbreaking 4 no machado, velho.
LOL.
Unbreaking
Primeira.
4?
Aham.
What?
Não é exclusivo do server?
Ué?
Você deu muita sorte, então.
Lógico, né,
Ah,
velho?
é, aquele... Ah, é, pode crer. Nossa.
GG! Mas você pegou
GG,
Sharpness?
Não, mano.
Eu tenho Sharp 3 depois, eu te empresto.
Boa, já vou pegar agora.
Não, depois você faz isso, cara. Vamos de espada. Sharp 3 vai ficar fraco, tem que ser Sharp 5.
Então bora.
Bora, vamos lá pro RP End. De espada mesmo. E... Tem alguém do clã online?
Tem.
Como é que vê mesmo?
Barra
Clã-
clãs.
Playlist, não é?
Não, barra clã
Não,
hoster.
playlist não. Sim.
Hoster.
Vamos ver quem tá online aí, galera. Tá o Dragoniro, o Lorde e o Luquinhas. Colhem no End aí, galera. Beleza, vamos ver se eles vêm aqui dar uma força pra
Cheguei,
gente.
negada.
Meu KD
Nossa,
caiu pra
mano.
7.9 por causa do último vídeo lá. Que a gente saiu, motando, nego pelado, eu morri. Então vou
Eu tô
aumentar
aqui
esse
no
KD.
end já, velho. Já tô aqui
Já
no
tá dando
end.
porrada?
Não, né?
Meu Deus, por que tá todo mundo vindo pra cá já? Já caí já. Já
Dropei
caí
uma chave de
matando.
diamante porque eu tô ostentando.
Caí matando já aqui, galera. Vamos aumentar esse KD aí, cachorreira.
Mano, tem muito full diamante que não desceu ainda.
Que desça, vai tomar um pau na cara.
Que
Já
isso?
encontrei um P4, me ajuda aí, Deco.
Eu não.
Nossa, vai deixar eu sozinho contra 2 P4. O Dragoniro
chegando
tá aqui, galera. Boa, moleque. Boa,
Nossa, um
moleque.
morreu ali ou foi impressão minha?
Alguém
Não.
morreu, velho.
É, eu vi que alguém morreu ali.
Mano, a gente precisa começar a fazer mais poção, velho.
Mano, eu já tomei as duas que eu tinha aqui. Tô
Mano,
puto.
quanto
Mano,
full
só
diamante,
tem
cara?
nego
Olha isso.
diamante, velho.
Mano do céu.
Ferrou, galera.
Puta, mais hardcore, servidor 2 e
Ai,
servidor 1,
todo
hein,
mundo
mano.
fica me focando aqui,
Mano, eu
velho.
tô tomando muito dano.
Bah, e eu? Ai, ai. Eu não tô nem batendo, eu só tô fugindo, velho. Eu vou quebrar já. Mano, por que tem 5 caras em cima de mim? Olha isso.
Mano, os caras tá me focando muito,
Mano,
velho.
você não tem noção de quanto que eu tô sendo focado, velho. Juro, você não tem noção, velho. A
Nossa,
gente é
mano. Mano,
isso,
tem
cara.
2 em mim, cara.
Véi, tem 5 em mim, velho.
Ah, mas você tem mais gente junto aí.
Vou é fugir daqui. Olha
Realmente.
isso, mano. Por que
Mano,
tá todo
olha
mundo virando atrás de mim?
passeata aqui.
Ah! Olha isso, tem 10 caras atrás de mim, mano. Eu vou ter que comer todos meus capirotos, velho. Vai
Nossa.
quebrar meu
Mano,
bagulho.
tem uns caras com os knockback muito monstro, cara.
Não, sim, isso me dá muita raiva, velho. Juro.
Mano, tem mão.
Mano, eu tô
Cara,
num
tem o quê?
X1
Uns
muito
20 e
insano,
poucos
velho.
pro diamante aqui?
Mano, eu não consigo fazer X1, velho. Já gastei todos os meus capirotos quase. Olha isso. Eu tô uma porrada do além, galera. Pera aí, eu vou tentar voltar pro spawn.
É Jesus.
Ah, mano, da onde tá vindo? Ah, olha isso. Oh, tem 5 P4 atrás de mim, velho. Sem brincadeira.
Ah, eu vou muito morrer, velho.
Eu tô upando acrobacia até, pra vocês terem noção, velho.
Eu também. Ai, errei! Eu escrevi spawn errado. Ah,
Você morreu?
não,
Ai, eu não
quase.
posso dizer que tá em combate. Tô em combate. Ah, eu saí de combate. Ah, mano,
tem
que
5
bosta.
contra mim, velho. Jesus
CF!
Cristo.
Ah, vai todo mundo que tava no CF em cima de mim
Voltei,
agora, mano. Meu
voltei.
Deus do céu. Conseguiu sair daí?
Aham.
Mano, sério, tem muita gente atrás de mim. Nunca vi isso na minha vida, mano.
Mano, olha isso, cara.
Ah,
muita
mano,
gente.
consegui sair no spawn, não sei como. Meu Deus, tomei um hit enquanto eu saía. Olha isso, já quebrou tudo minha armadura, velho.
Mano, minha tá toda cansada
Mano, por
também,
que, que
velho.
não era assim, velho?
Não era assim do game.
Mano, a gente precisa recrutar mais gente, velho.
Mano, tá
Não é
foda,
não?
velho. Os caras tá vindo com força, mano.
Não,
juro.
mano, mas é que vem 5 caras em cima de mim, mano. Tem
Os caras se
4.
juntam, mano. Todo mundo contra a gente. É uma sacanagem.
Nossa, eu vou ter que comprar mais capiroto, velho. Na boa,
Nossa, verdade, vou lá também. Warp VIP.
Mano, tem 4 diamantes atrás de mim e os caras
Ah,
me jogando no
Você
cantinho.
tá fazendo o que aí, Deco? Você é bobo, você quer
Pô,
morrer,
eu não
né?
consegui sair ainda,
Por isso
velho.
teu KD é negativo.
Fica chill aí. Fica chill aí.
Vai morrer.
Deco, nem mata
Chola
ninguém.
mais.
O cara não mata ninguém, galera. Eu não sei onde fica capiroto.
Não sei também onde é.
Tô procurando aqui igual um bobão.
Ah, aqui.
Achei.
Não.
Beleza, comprei umas 3, tá bom. Vamos voltar lá pra ajudar o Deco antes que ele morra?
Mano, olha isso, cara. O cara tá com o quê? Knockback 1000, velho? Eu vou ir
Tem uns
de
cara
um lado
que
pro outro
tão-
da arena, mano.
Animal, velho, na moral. Chegar a matar só os pelados e vou vazar, filho. Meu KD vai passar altura, moleque.
Olha lá, depois, ó. Lixo. Só sobe
ó
cadê
como
matando
vai.
pelado.
Nem tem 10 P4 me batendo ao mesmo tempo, não, imagina.
Ah, em mim tem mais 10, velho.
Ah, chora.
Ah, não tô chorando. Você que chorou
Tá,
primeiro.
você tá chorando aí, Deco.
Eu tô de boa, cara.
Ó o
Fugi
Dragoniro, eu vou
desse
ficar junto com o Dragoniro. Vamos se reunir, galera. Os
Vocês
delícias
que
ficam
correram
juntos,
aí
mano.
da
Ah,
luta.
ia
Vocês
quebrar,
correr.
velho. Ia quebrar, não quero perder P4.
Ah, eu tô desde o começo aqui, velho.
Ninguém perguntou.
Ô, louco.
Perguntei se aqui é fácil.
moleque. Eu vou ficar junto com o Drago aqui, mano. Drago, protege eu. Mano, de onde que eu tô tomando porrada, velho?
Mano, tem uns
Ah,
caras que
não
não
tem
foram com a minha
condição,
cara
mano.
aqui, velho.
Nossa, tem 20 P4 me batendo, velho.
Vou matar os pelados. Caraca, eu tomei um knockback muito grande.
Mano, eu tomo
Consegui sair, mano.
eu tomo um ataque, o cara tá a 10 metros de mim, eu tomo um ataque. Olha isso!
Ajuda aqui, Lugin.
Ah, tem 40 caras me batendo, velho. Ah, não tem como, velho. Olha o CF ali morrendo. Eu só vejo um monte assim, é o CF. Vamos ficar junto, CF. Vai todo mundo em cima da gente mesmo? Vai, vamos ficar junto. A gente mata o que der pra matar, velho. Vai. Liga esse
Mano,
skill e
cai
sai
na lava.
batendo. Todo
Nossa.
mundo vai bater todo mundo. Vai
Nossa,
quebrar
que
tudo.
Não consigo nem enxergar nada. Vai,
Nossa,
corre, capiroto.
que é isso, mano? Meu Deus, o que tá acontecendo, galera? O Valmir, para! Para, Valmir! O Valmir gosta de matar, talvez ele me mata, mano. Valmir chato, mano.
Quebrei com o capacete de um cara
Eu
ali,
ouvi um bagulho quebrando aí também, viado.
Deixa eu ver de
Ah, eu
quanto
vou
vocês
falar
estão.
com o Valmir pra ele me proteger.
Vocês estão na lava? Eu tô indo aí.
Tamo na lava aqui, velho.
Valmir, me salva! Ai, meu Deus do céu, galera. O que tá acontecendo?
Mano, não sei,
Já
velho.
quebrei quase tudo já,
Ô,
mano.
o Valmir tá tretando aqui comigo, me ajuda.
Eu esquivei da porrada do cara, como assim, velho? Galera, não
Do
tem
quê?
como... Mano, é tanta porrada que eu não consigo fazer nada. Vou quebrar e
Vocês
vou
que estão no
morrer.
cantinho?
Ah, eu tô no cantinho sendo estuprado aqui.
Relaxa, Lugin, chegamos,
Cheguei.
viado.
Olha
por
isso,
trás aqui.
nossa, os knockback dos caras me mandam pro infinito.
Tô muito
viado.
cansado, velho. Aí.
Saí correndo, fi, tô nem
Tô muito
vendo.
cansado, não consigo usar a habilidade, né?
Falou, galera, até mais. Quem sabe eu volto aí algum
Esquivei,
dia.
viado. Tô esquivando tudo aqui.
Nossa, eu já quebrei quase tudo de novo, velho. Mano, eu matei alguma coisa? Deixa eu ver se meu KD aumentou. Aumentou 0.3.
Vai, Deco. Bora. Vou ajudar o Deco aqui. Vou matar esse cara aí, velho. Na moral, vamos dropar ele.
Esse aqui, ó.
É?
Eu preciso
Tá
pegar
morto.
armadura nova já, velho. Só que eu não tenho mais armadura de unbreaking.
Mano, eu tô aumentando muita acrobacia, velho. Não sei por quê.
Pior que eu também, os caras ficam me jogando
Ah, eu
pra
vou com
cima.
essa mesma. Se quebrar, quebrou, velho.
Nossa, quase morri, Deco.
Tô segurando ele aqui.
Vai ver.
Gente, só tem full diamante nesse end, tô com medo.
Nossa, eu tô ganhando nível de espada, velho. Fazer uma
Caraca,
conta
chegou o
disso.
Valmir aqui, velho. Que
Onde
é
vocês
isso?
estão, velho?
A
Ô,
gente tá no
Valmir.
cantinho da arena.
Valmir é um viado.
Naquele cantinho que você tava, tá ligado? Mano, meu dedo tá doendo.
Não foi nem morto. Eu
Ô,
só
o
tô
Valmir tá
vendo-
sem capacete, mano. Ô, o
Mano,
Valmir tá do
atrás-
nosso lado ou tá no...
Não, ele tá
eu
do nosso
falei
lado,
pra ele
não.
parar de me matar, velho. Só sei disso. Eu vou matar os pelados aqui.
Ele tá sem capacete, ô, CF.
Gente, atraiam os P4 aí que eu vou pôr um pouco meu KD aqui.
Ah, chegou o cara
Tá.
com o ignorante com o machado. Quase morri aqui já.
Ai, vai quebrar meu capacete, gente. Vou ter que vazar dessa bosta. Mano, não tem como,
Dropou,
velho.
dropou um.
Dropou o Valmir, dropou o Valmir.
O Valmir dropou?
Aham.
Dropamos o Valmir aqui.
Meu capacete vai
esse
quebrar,
cara tá
velho. Que
correndo, hein?
saco,
O cara
mano.
pegou os itens, velho. Não peguei nada. E você?
Eu peguei algumas coisas, eu acho. Não sei.
Ai,
Não
saí.
consigo ver agora.
Nossa, meu capacete quebrou, gente.
Nossa, o cara com machado, meu Deus.
Eu
cara-
vou terminar por aqui, não vou batalhar mais não, velho.
Lixo.
Ah, vai quebrar tudo. Olha isso.
Eu reparo pra você.
Tá tudo vermelho, velho.
Não, mas se quebrar não tem como reparar, né?
Não,
Rolei.
eu vou aí e
Toma.
reparo agora.
Não, já deu pra mim, velho. Galera,
Ah, mano, eu tava no... Ah, eu
CF,
parei achando
chora
que...
não, chora
Não,
não.
eu vou morrer, eu juro.
Chora não. Eu vou finalizar
Mano,
esse episódio por aqui, galera.
O
Espero que vocês
Luguinho é
tenham
o que mais chora,
gostado.
não sei o que ele fala.
Deco.
Que
Vou
foi?
ter que olhar o cadê do Deco.
Ai, ai, vai lá matar o pelado pra aumentar o KD. Porque matando o Fudima você não consegue. Ô.
Deco, seu cadê tá no 2. Eu vou terminar o vídeo
Meu KD
depois
tá
dessa,
2?
galera. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Tamo junto. Deixa um like. Falou!
falou.
exploded and we didn't finish the race. The end. Baby! Yeah. Yeah. Fuck. We tried. It's a good vacation. Bye. Fuck. There's my beautiful bike over there. Fuck yourself. I got a flat tire and my bestest buddy that I came down here with gave away all the fucking tubes. I was being a nice guy. This guy's nice too. He brought us tools, even though he can't take advantage of them. And he drinks beers, so he's definitely cool. Yeah, and tire pump broke. Both of them. That's bad. That's fucking Hellcat, Alley Cat. Both stand up pumps failed. Life failed. At least here's the cool that thing. I still got all my teeth though.
In 2016, university sport goes on a journey across the world to share its values and its commitment to athletic and academic excellence. This is a year of FISU World University Championships. More than 8,000 students will compete at the 34 events organized in 25 countries, sharing and chasing their long-held dreams. We are International University Sports Federation. Follow your champions. FISU, today's stars, tomorrow's leaders.
arrived. There was 09 car and with a nice sound, and obviously it felt good. But it's good to have a kind of proper run and not just one straight up and down. So they done a very nice thing here.
Apart. It was such a close race that I don't know, I just went in there and I thought I have to ride my heart out to win a medal, and I'm pretty glad that happened actually. I think it's just a mix between all the disciplines of snowboarding. Like, it's a speed, but you still need to have like skills that are required in freestyle as well, so it's just like that overall impression that gets me.
When education meets sport and culture. What best promotes excellence in mind and body? Where do friendship, integrity, and achievement meet? Which event gathers the best student athletes from around the world? The Universiade, the home of international university sports. Today's stars, tomorrow's leaders.
Each other, but we don't really know each other. And here's the safety boat, and that was going to follow us down the river, but it's a huge river, so I didn't expect to see Scott at any time during the race, and I didn't. And here's this guy, West Hansen from Texas, and he's got this carbon fiber super elite boat, and I'm like, have no idea how to even relate to that. There's another guy there who's running some website on race fitness, and so he's Mark Ules, right? I always mispronounce his last name. And so Mark's from Colorado, and he's got a high-end boat, and he's showing up. And so I'm feeling like a pickup truck at a NASCAR race when it comes to these two guys. But I also remember thinking to myself, they don't know this river. I know this river. Maybe that's an inside advantage. I was in a homemade kayak that I was on the river all the time with, but hardly a fast boat. You know, it's a touring kayak, and that was that first year. These guys took off like really quickly at the very beginning of the race. But what I want to point out is the guy up in the upper part there. I still don't know what this guy's name was, but this guy showed up in that boat, all right? So this is like a Dick's Sporting Goods boat, like 10 feet long, 2 dry bags with straps underneath, which kills your whole speed. Not that he had any whole speed in the boat like that. And this guy finished it, right?
No, he only went 5 miles.
I thought he finished it. Okay, I only went 5 miles. All right, well, I show the Red Bull can. I show the Red Bull can because the race, as it's grown over time, has these kind of crazy things show up. For example, one year, the race had some people who had a catamaran, like a sailboat, you know, and they had mounted bass boat seats onto it and torn the sail off of it, and that was the boat they were going to use. Now, those guys did finish, right? So the Red Bull one is another one. So we're in the safety meeting. I think it was the 3rd year. I look over, and there's this guy, and he's tapping his leg, and he's got like stacked cans of Red Bull, and he's just pounding it. And I'm thinking, you got to get a good night's sleep tonight because the race starts tomorrow morning, and you're not going to sleep well from here until you're done. And he's just pounding these Red Bulls, pounding these Red Bulls. Well, apparently, this guy made it to about 40 miles down the river before his heart went into tachycardia from all the caffeine, and he actually got carted off in an ambulance. So every year you see people show up that I'm sure Scott must go, you just have to take a pause, that are wildly unprepared for what they're about to get into. But I've also learned not to write those people off because it is absolutely amazing how many of those people actually finish the journey. All right, so that's what the race looks like now. So you go from 11 boats in the beginning of it to now there's literally a stream of boats as far as you can see when the race starts out. It is a phenomenal feeling to be in that pack doing this race. You just have to do it sometime to understand what it feels like to do that. It's a combination of excitement, fear, and trepidation because it's such a long race that you just don't know what's going to happen. Weather, you name it, all sorts of things can come out. All right, but everything's bigger in Texas. This was sent to me by a friend who's now a friend, but that guy who was in the first year racing, West Hansen, sent me this picture. And the reason I put this picture up here is because the Texas boats have dominated the race throughout its history, and they still do to a large degree. But they brought a whole nother thing up. Was it the third year that they brought the first multi-man boat up, Scott? So they started bringing up these multi-man boats. These are these long, skinny carbon fiber boats. And this was a very interesting race here because this was a team of Texas paddlers, hardcore Texas paddlers, and then was a team of one Texas paddler. And where were the rest of the guys from? From Belize. And this was a battle of attrition on who could make it down. And quite a few of the Belize paddlers ended up dropping out before the race was over, but that was quite a battle of wills. And they set a record that only just recently got broken. That record that year stood for quite a while. I'm pretty sure it was that year. All right, so personally, this race transformed what paddling meant for me. And the reason I bring that up is because my story is completely the same as multiple people in the state of Missouri now. So when you would go to the Missouri River Park, a parking lot on a boat ramp on the Missouri River, first of all, you wouldn't see another kayak. And then if you did see a kayak, it would just be a touring kayak if there was another kayak. But now when you go to a parking lot, certainly during a race, it is full of high-end race boats. I have gone from paddling touring kayaks to having a whole fleet of super high-end boats that my butt literally hardly fits into because they're so skinny, they're long, they're light, they are ridiculously hard to keep upright, but they're also amazingly fast. So there has been a renaissance of what it means to race in Missouri, but also a renaissance of what it means to race on the river. And as a result of this, there's been a radical change in the type of boats that have occurred, kind of testing things out. Outriggers have become a boat that is highly competitive. In fact, this last year, no doubt about it, we have a local homegrown boy, Ryan Slebos, who builds his own solo outriggers and shattered the record on last year's race. But the open Texas-style boats are still seen quite a bit, and those boats seem to still be holding their own. But I have a feeling that outriggers and some kind of modification of those are probably the future of the race. To give you an example of these other boats that are there, the one on the upper left is a surf ski with a specialized stabilizer in case you lean the boat over too far. The one on the right is actually a paddle boat, so it has a propeller underneath. The person sits back and it's like a recumbent bicycle. People use all sorts of interesting stabilizers to try to deal with the fatigue that happens when you are paddling for nonstop for 50 hours. Is typically that would be the average time for most people to finish the race. It's around 50 to 55 hours. The person on the right was in this kind of weird stand-up craft. We get lots of interesting boats. But this is a boat that was also built by some local paddlers, the Yanceys, and they, in my opinion, have designed the fastest boat and the most 340 specific boat that is out there. Now, they haven't been paddling last year for complex reasons besides just burning out a little bit, but there's no doubt that this boat was shattering every race it went in. That is an incredibly fast boat, and I think that that's probably the first Missouri 340 specific boat that we've seen come out of here. All right, the boats themselves are really interesting because when you're in a race that is this long, everything decays over time. If I have to describe the experience of paddling this race, it would be a slow melting of all the things that don't really matter into just the core element of what's left to try to get down the river. Now that's both physically and spiritually. So as you go through the race, you go in fairly fit, you go in fairly hydrated, fairly well fed, and you go in fairly spiritually ready to go. You're excited, and then over course of time, all of those things decay until you have just this core element. And one of the key pieces of advice I give to anybody on rigging in their boat is to think about what you're going to be like when you're completely beat down. Because I'm telling you right now, if that suntan lotion is just slightly out of reach, or you have to kind of go through a motion to get to it, you're going to blow off putting on that suntan lotion, and then you're going to get a sunburn. And then when you get a sunburn, you're going to stop hydrating correctly, and then you're going to decay from there. Your chafing will get worse, and then you'll be done, and you'll fall out of the race. So little teeny things add up really fast. And so when you talk about rigging in the boat, really what it's about is making sure everything is right where you can get to it, and that your support crew can change things out in a very efficient manner. But there's no doubt, and I have to be careful of my language here because we're being broadcast, but your posterior is probably one of the biggest things you need to think about in this race. Because I'm telling you right now, sitting in a seat where you can't really move and shuffle around like you can in an office chair for 50 hours, you will have a voice talking to you, and it's definitely telling you that it's not happy. So there's all kinds of really interesting and bizarre ways of trying to pad up your seat area, and that's a critical area if you're thinking about doing this race, is to think about your seat. All right, so there's all sorts of other things which I'm not going to get into in detail, but I'll put this picture up just to kind of show you that this is not a float trip. When you get ready for this race, your boat is being set up and specifically designed to accomplish a task with fluids that can be changed out into receptacles and the whole 9 yards. And that is a boat that I used in the fastest I've ever done the race. We were the second boat into St. Charles in that year with Joe Mann, but we still lost to a couple of twins out of Seattle who come down and do this race, and every time they do extremely well. All right, stand-up paddleboarding has become more of a thing in this race, and you can't take it away from them. You know, when Shane, who's the guy up there in the upper right, first said he was going to do this, I was like, yeah, whatever, man. You'll never make it. Not only has he made it, but he's done it multiple times, but he's also not a normal guy. See that down there, that sort of skateboard where he's using a pole? He did that from St. Louis to New Orleans on land, right? So he's kind of an odd duck. He's got some twisted things, but I'll tell you what, anytime that guy makes up his mind he's going to do something, and he's a friend of mine, anytime he makes up his mind he's going to do something, look out. And so he's done this race multiple times, but actually a guy, Blake, who I was talking to a few days ago, I think he set the record on stand-up last year. It was a really fast river last year. A lot of records fell, but it was also had plenty of conditions that would challenge a stand-up paddleboarder, and so you can't take anything away from him. All right, so another element to do this race that is absolutely critical is your ground crew. And the ground crew is way more important than just that they're handing you fluids and nutrition. And I could go into an entire speech about how important it is to stay on top of your fluids and nutrition. But it's also a spiritual uplift. I can tell you that during every race I've ever done, and I've done 5 of them, I have quit the race multiple times during that race. And the only reason I get back on the water is because that ground crew is waiting for me at the next boat ramp. Or I see them at the boat ramp, I'm ready to quit, and I just decide to go one more ramp. And most people I talk to end up in that same cycle. You will end up in these emotional lows during the race. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this because this is this could be a presentation in and of itself. But there is a whole bunch of technical stuff that you need to also learn in terms of doing the race on the Missouri River. It is a very big, wide open river, so wind is a big factor. It is a channelized system, and I'll go through a few of those things, but there are some unique elements that you're not going to find in the Texas water safari. It's a huge body of water that you're on. Remarkably big. And I will tell you this much, at night on a full moon, when you're in the middle of that river during this race, you know, that's right up there with any experience you'll have in your entire life. The river is majestic, and that's the word I always come back to when I describe what it's like to paddle on the Missouri River. It does have barges on it. Not as many as it used to, and the barges do kick up waves, but they don't kick up waves that are so intense that it's going to disrupt your boat or cause you to flip over. The waves are something you'll have to factor into. You'll turn your boat into those waves, but pretty soon things settle down, and I have to dispel the idea that the barges will create waves so big that they'll flip your boat. The hazard of a barge is they can't steer out of your way. So it's understanding that you have to move out of that barge's way. And where this becomes a really important factor is 2 years ago, was the last time I did the race. It fogged in really, really bad on the second night. And on that night, several people who are not locals, who are from out of state, just pushed on through the fog. And one of them told me that the way he just felt he could hear what he needed to hear going down the river. Absolutely not. David and I put to shore. We still came in second in men's tandem, but we lost our time significantly because there's no way I'm running into something like this, parked or moving down the river in the middle of the night in a fog. So there are some unique aspects to this race, unlike other races. The wing dams are these structures that are there to channelize the river. At the right river levels, those can be just barely underwater and can also be a hazard. But a little bit of time on the river, especially with somebody who understands the river, and you'll get very quickly where you understand this. In fact, the bends and how things work are very, very engineered. The river is an engineered river. So one of the things that comes up is where is the flow in the river? And I'm going to skip through these slides, but I do want to focus on this one right here. Every single year when I see teams on this race who are constantly moving from one side of the river to the other as they're chasing what they perceive to be faster water. And especially out-of-state teams tend to do this because on a lot of rivers that aren't as channelized as the Missouri, there are much faster segments of water, and if you can stay in those, especially if you do it consistently over time, it can make a big difference on your total time. This is a Doppler radar. So what this basically shows is the movement of the water. The darker the red is the faster the moving the water. And what you can see from this is, remember the picture I put up here a little while ago? This is a big river, right? So when you go and look at this Doppler radar, it's pretty obvious that there is a continuous, very wide body of fast-moving water. You do not need to spend time getting all over the river trying to find fast water current. If you stay in the middle, when in doubt, stay in the middle, and if you stay on the outside of the bends, you'll be in the fast water. And the subtleties of moving a little bit one way or the other are really, in my opinion, not worth it. So that would be a tip I would give anybody who hasn't done the race, or even if you have done the race and you felt like you were chasing fast water, I just would encourage you to stop, because that's the science. It's not going to pay out for you. All right, so top 10 tips. Try everything out before the race. There's a real tendency the 2 weeks before the race to get on Amazon.com and start ordering all sorts of cool little things. You know, things that because you're nervous and you start ordering, you know, that cushion for the seat and this, that, and the other thing. You cannot do that. In fact, it always amazes me, people who buy a boat a month before the race. The reality is, I think you need to have your entire system down 2 months before the race. Everything is where it's going to be and you don't change anything, including the shoes you're going to wear, the clothes you're going to wear, the shorts you're going to wear. You know, putting on a brand new pair of cool shorts that you bought from REI, might be that those shorts chafe you in the back. And that little bit of chafing is no big deal on a 20-mile float trip, but after 100 miles of twisting back and forth, that can become a tragedy. So everything has to be done beforehand. Chafing is a big deal. Sunscreen is a big deal. A lot of people I see don't get really careful about applying sunscreen, and once you get a really hard burn, you stop, your body loses its ability to thermoregulate. Your posterior is a major consideration. Your hands are a consideration. It doesn't mean you should necessarily wear gloves, but you need to think about it. A lot of times the ways to deal with hands that get really bad is how you grip the paddle. It's a technique issue. Again, we don't have time to it. But number 6 is probably the most important piece of advice on this whole thing, and that is never ever quit while you're on the water. Never, while you're paddling down the river, say, I'm done. I've had it. I'm just going to quit. Don't even allow yourself to have that thought process on the water. The most you can give yourself is at the next ramp, I am so miserable, I'm going to sit on shore for half an hour, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do. Because I can't tell you how many people I have seen quit on the water, hit the ramp, they tell their crew they're done, their crew loads the boats, gets ready to drive out of the parking lot, and they go, wait, I think I can keep going. Or they get in the car and drive away and they wish they'd kept going. So never quit on the water. Don't even allow it to enter into your thought process. Light paddle makes a big difference. Good gear makes a big difference. Though lots of people do this race in a canoe, and I would not, an aluminum canoe, and I would definitely not let high-end technical gear keep you from doing the race. You can do this race in a recreational canoe and have a fantastic experience and put up a pretty good time as well. Food and hydration, again, we don't have time to get into this, but those are critical. A lot of people drop out of the race because they stop eating, or they eat the wrong foods, or they don't have foods that they can switch to once their body doesn't want to eat the same thing they thought was going to work. For example, if you start out eating power bars, trust me, after 10 hours, you won't want to see a power bar. And so if the only thing your team has to hand you is power bars for the entire race, you have a problem on your hands. So there are all kinds of things to consider in terms of food, but West Hansen gave me some of the best advice, and that is, he said, just be able to eat real food periodically during the race. You know, there's nothing like a hamburger or a sub sandwich to really kind of pick up your spirits. Hydration is a big deal. We have not had anybody die during the race. No, that's not true. There was a gentleman who went into cardiac arrest, and I don't presume to know exactly the details of what occurred, but I've been told that it was probably a pre-existing condition. The Texas Water Safari has had over the last 4 or 5 years a couple of deaths as a direct result of mismanaging hydration. Now, it's a very hot race down there, so you probably would think it was because the person didn't drink enough water and had a heat stroke. But in both cases, the people that died in that race, the conclusion now is that they overhydrated. And it's what's called hypernatremia. And what it does is it throws off your electrolyte balance. So you can drink too much water during an intense physical exercise, and it can be life-threatening, just as life-threatening as not drinking enough water. The rule of thumb is somewhere around 1 liter an hour. If you're less than that, you should get a little nervous, but you should also get just as nervous if you're drinking more than 1 liter an hour. And obviously it depends on the temperature, and it depends on you as an individual. But hydration is probably one of the most important things to get down before the race, so that if you're trying to be really competitive. And then bathroom and bilge logistics are another one. I'm not going to get into those here, but you need to at least have a realistic plan. I will tell you this much. I went into the race the year that Joe Mann and I did really well, and Joe started telling me how he had this theory that he was going to find a way to poop in the boat. I said, no, you're not. He's like, yeah, man, it'll save us some time. I go, Joe, you're not pooping in the boat. So I don't know how you're going to handle these issues, but you do need to think about it. They're real, and you have to figure it out. Obviously, peeing in the boat is something that you're going to probably do into a bottle, and it's more complicated for women than it is for men to accomplish that task. And I've seen some really elaborate ways to approach that, cutouts in the seat. Just like when my wife asked me if she looks fat in this dress, I'm not going to be stupid enough to get into talking about what I think is strategies for being in a boat for a woman. But the point is, if you may want to contact a racer who's done the race and ask her what she did in that regard if you're thinking of doing the race. And that's an issue that you need to address. All right, so let's go through a little bit about this experience, because I've kind of gone through it as if it was like a real kind of clinical, like just going out to do a 10-mile run or even doing a marathon, a 26-mile run. This race is not normal. And there's nothing normal about what's going to happen to you as you get into this race. You are going to hallucinate. You are going to see things. You are going to go through times when you are just unbelievably happy. You're like, oh my God, my life is awesome. And then you're going to go through times when you're like, why do I hate myself so much? And what is it about my self-esteem that would cause me to do this to myself? And I have a family and I have kids, and trust me, you're going to go through the entire emotional gambit during this, because this race will kick your butt. All right? It is an unbelievably long distance. Even if you're not trying to be on the podium, it is a huge physical challenge to do the race. And if you're trying to be on the podium, like the last 3 or 4 times I've done the race, I've gotten no sleep. None at all. You don't allow yourself any during the entire race. In fact, my daughter used to sit at the end of the boat ramp with a stopwatch, and the longest we stopped at any ramp was 1 minute and about 20 seconds. So everything was on the water, move, go, go. And that is going to tear you down over time. See the guy getting his bandage done? That's from having a life jacket that you didn't try out and figure out whether it's going to chafe you. I put down here on the right nipples. And it's not, it is funny, but here's the reason I want to talk about nipples. This is a guy problem. Guys wear a loose shirt because that seems like a thing you'd want to wear in hot temperatures. And that loose shirt does this little shimmy and you don't notice it. After 100 miles, you're beginning to notice it. After 200 miles, it's the only thing you're noticing. All right. So I've seen guys take their shirt off and their nipples were just catastrophic wreck. And they've had to put big patches of duct tape on their chest in order to continue with the race. So those are the little things that are going to bring you down. It's not very romantic, but that's where it's at. All right, so sleeping. I see people every year, they talk about, yeah, I'm going to have hammock or tent. My ground crew is going to set up this place so I can at least get a couple hours sleep. You don't need any of that, man, because that is all you need once you get into that mode. When you are completely unable to paddle and you can't go, this is how you're going to sleep. You are just going to bomb out at wherever you are. I once slept because it was raining so bad and it was storming, and I didn't feel it was safe to keep going. And all I could do was talk myself into moving 8 feet up the ramp and off to the side so nobody would run me over. And literally, there was 4 inches of water running underneath me as it was raining, and it was awesome. It was fantastic. It was only sucked when I had to get back in the boat. All right, so sleeping is not an issue. That's Merrick, by the way. He's sleeping in a paddling position. All right. You are going to not be fit for public consumption halfway through this race. You are going to spill your pee bottle on yourself multiple times. You are going to think you were going to burp and you end up throwing up a little bit. I mean, I just can't go through it all. But by the time this thing's done, it's going to take a quarantine zone in order for your family to take you home. You need 3 or 4 showers in a row in order to get where you need to be after this thing. It is not a normal event. And the people that come and do this race are not normal either. This is some of my favorite racers. So they've raced multiple times. And one year, this is Black Coffee and A-Dog. And one year, they just basically said to each other, this is the way A-Dog told me. He goes, we were like talking, we said, dude, why don't we just make our own boat? They'd already made boats. They'd made wooden kayaks before. He goes, but let's just make it out of stuff that we find in trash cans. We can't make it out of anything if we can't find it in a trash can. And they both thought it was a great idea. I have no idea how much alcohol was involved in that discussion. But that's what they did. So they went and they built an entire boat out of plastic barrels. Nothing that they used could be used unless they found it in a dumpster. The paddles were built from a dumpster. I guess he's using a commercial blade up front, but A-Dog's using a paddle he built from dumpster diving. And this was the boat they used. And they killed it. They did fantastic. These guys come down every single year. This is Los Humongos. This is Wally Werdick and, oh my God, I'm forgetting the other guy's name. Do you remember his name? What? Nick, that's right. They come down every year and they're always dressed up like luchadors, and they are unbelievably competitive. This was the last time I did the race was with David Lackey, and we took our boat and painted it like a gigantic lizard and even put glowing eyeballs in it, and got pretty stupid with the whole thing. And you'll see a lot of boats that are decorated like this. This was the support team one year. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong in life that I can't get a Hooters team as my support team, but somebody got a Hooters team as their support team. This was like the second year, all right? I have no idea the backstory. Do you know the backstory on that at all? It's not worth it? All right, well, anyway, I have this one I can't explain to you. I have no idea. I don't know if that's a California or North Carolina or something, but that's not a Missouri plate. And I'm not sure what the shopping cart's all about. It is, okay. All right, well, it's probably brilliant in a really redneck kind of way. All right, so this guy, he was fast, man. He did really well in the race. In fact, his partner dropped out about halfway through the race, and he just kept paddling a tandem canoe by himself. Finished the race, still did it in pretty good time. He's from Texas. And then he just stripped down to his underwear and walked around with a guitar for like a day and a half. I mean, he wouldn't even talk. You'd like go, hey, what's up, man? He'd just give you that grin right there. He wouldn't even say anything to you and just walk around in his underwear. Yeah. Yeah, so, I don't pretend that. You could have an entire slideshow just on 340 tattoos. No doubt about it. In fact, Scott's probably had most of them texted to him. 79 hours is not a very fast time. So that's kind of like your girlfriend, where you have to scratch Susie off because it's no longer Susie. So I think if I was to put the tattoo on, I would leave the time off because hopefully they'll improve that. I can't explain this one at all. All right, but that's a support team right there. So that's actually for Matt Green, and those of you who know Matt Green will know that his friends, including me, are not probably the healthiest individuals around. All right, this is an amazing story, and I'm almost done here. This is A-Dog again, the one who built the canoe out of plastic barrels. I think in some ways, this is the story that I have more respect about the 340, and almost in some ways it's what the 340 is all about, is what these guys did. They paddled down the race with their bikes broke down and on the back deck. And then when they got to St. Charles, they unfolded a trailer that they had inside the boat, and they put the bikes back together, and they rode all the way back to Kansas City. Yeah. That's awesome. And so we've had some very elite racers, you know, some national level racers. Some of the top ultramarathon paddlers in the United States have come to this race and have put up unbelievable times. We've had some, you know, just shattering times. The interesting thing is Missouri paddlers are starting to put up very competitive times, and now some of the records belong in Missouri paddlers' hands. But in general, we've had some world-class talent show up who have really just hit the bell on this thing. But I know from talking to Scott about this more than once that this is the kind of thing that is the heart and soul of the 340. It's not taking anything away from the first place winners, but it's that person who's doing this as a personal challenge that is the heart and soul in this. And Scott has intentionally tried to keep it that way, and I think he's right on track, because this race has done more to bring attention to the Missouri River than any other element that could have occurred. In terms of river cleanups, in terms of water trails, all those things were helpful. They were helping people understand the river, get out there. But this race has completely thrown the door open. And now, whenever you go out on the weekend and you go out on the river, you will see a handful of kayakers every single time, all over the place. And they're not all 340 racers. People see in an article in the newspaper, they see that people are paddling on the river, they see this race, they may not ever want to do the race, but they begin to have an interest in getting out there themselves for the first time. So I definitely think that Scott deserves a lot of credit for this, and I think this race has been kind of unique in that what it's positioned us for. But I was going to show this because when you start looking for all these crazy races, I was trying to show a few, I came across this. The Canadians beat us when it comes to crazy. This is a race across a major wide river, and I don't remember what town it is. But what they do is as soon as they begin to get some leads, which is the open water, show up, they have this race, and they build these boats specifically for this race. And the whole idea is that they run the boat because they can run across the ice, but then they can jump in, and if they have to, they'll pick up paddles, but they almost never use them. And they actually race across this ice. Can you imagine how dangerous that is? You lose contact with that boat and fall into that water, you're not coming back up. But anyway, that's a pretty crazy race as it is. So I'm done, and I just want to kind of put in perspective that this is our race. So even if you never want to do this race, we now have in the state of Missouri the equivalent, in my opinion, of like having the Tour de France. We have the longest continuous canoe and kayak race in the United States, and it's right here in our backyard. And the number of people who come from out of state and all the hotels that they get and all of the ground crews and all the gas stations and the food that they buy, the economic impact of this race is phenomenal. And it still is frustrating to me that the state as a whole has not woke up to what we have. But I guess it'll happen. We went through our 10th anniversary on the race last year, and it's now a fixed asset. This is a tradition in the state of Missouri, and your grandkids will be doing this race at some point in time. And that's when Scott and I will be telling stories about how hard it was back when the river was longer, right? Okay, that's it. Thanks.